So, yeah, since September we've been looking at the Dharma through symbols and stories, and for the past few weeks we've been looking at the Buddhist Wheel of Life, which we've got over here. A really powerful set of symbols that I think can give us a real insight into the workings of our minds and the way we can escape from the usual unhelpful patterns that our minds and our hearts get into. So the Wheel of Life is in a sense how we get trapped, but also how we escape. And the title of tonight's talk is The Great Escape. And it's this idea of escape that I really want to focus on. What does this idea of escape mean? What are we escaping from? And what do we escape to? But to talk about that, I think it would be helpful first to just sort of recap a bit about the Wheel of Life, because the Wheel of Life is very much what we're escaping from. So over the last few weeks, we've seen that the Wheel of Life describes our usual existential situation as long as we are not enlightened. And in particular, it describes the way we keep going round and round in circles. Doing all sorts of things that seem really compelling and interesting at the time, but which ultimately get us nowhere. So the thing about the wheel is that it keeps going round in circles, and if you're on that wheel, you keep coming back to this. You seem to be doing lots, but you keep coming back to the same point. You get back to the place you were over and over and over again. And another thing about the wheel, of course, is that it makes ruts. And the more it carries on, the deeper and deeper the ruts get, and the more difficult it gets to do something different to get out of those ruts. So we've seen, looking at the Wheel of Life, can I move?
Yeah, yes.
We've seen that, you probably can't see this, but at the very centre of the Wheel of Life, powering it along, are three animals representing greed, hatred and delusion. So a pig, a snake and a cock, although it's not in that order. They are at the very hub of the wheel, the very centre of the wheel, and they're what power the wheel. Greed, hatred and delusion. So our delusion, because we don't see things as they are, that's the sort of basis of it. Because we don't see things as they are, we get greed. We're constantly grasping after things that can't really give us satisfaction. And also hatred, if you like. We're constantly pushing away what we don't want. And in particular, well, people, if you like, we're constantly jostling with other people because we want to get what we want, not what they want. So we're constantly jostling with them. So hatred is a very strong way of putting it, but ill will if you like. Ill will and aversion might be a better way of putting it. So anyway, unless we're enlightened, we're constantly being driven by greed, hatred and delusion. And that's what powers the wheel. Go back over there now. So that's the very centre. Then in the next circle out, we've got a picture of the mechanism by which greed, hatred and delusion make the wheel go around, which is the law of karma. So on one side we see light, we see beings going upwards to states of greater refinement, greater light, greater freedom, greater beauty. And on the other side we see dark. We see beings falling to darker states, to states of greater coarseness and greater suffering. So that is, in summary, the law of karma, the fact that, we change according to the way we act, we change. So the law of karma describes how the way we act now creates the person that we will be in the future. If we act in a positive, generous, kindly, beautiful, expansive way, then those aspects of our character are strengthened. If we put our will behind those aspects of our character, those are strengthened. We become more like that. And vice versa, if we act in unskillful ways, we strengthen the parts of our character that make us more cut off from others, more stingy, more coarse, more cramped, shut up in ourselves, more focused on our own wants and anxieties, more unhappy. So we're constantly creating the sort of person we're going to become by the aspects of ourselves we choose to act on. And the law of karma also tells us that the sort of person we create by that process determines the way we will experience the world. The angry, aggressive person lives in an angry, aggressive world. The person in dark mental states lives in a dark world. The person in more bright, expansive mental states lives in a brighter, more beautiful world. And this doesn't happen as any sort of judgment or punishment. It's or because we're sort of sent to a different place by some God. It happens because that is a natural result of the sort of person that we are. Even if we live in exactly the same world, we experience the world very differently according to the states of our heart and our mind. We experience the world through the lenses of our mental states. And different people can live in exactly the same world and experience the world very, very differently. Because the place we really live is our own heart and our own mind. That's where we really live, much more than we live in the outer world around us. So it's not as though we go to a different world, but we see the world differently. We feel differently about it, and we live differently in it, according to the sort of person that we create ourselves as, by the law of karma. And some of the different worlds we can create for ourselves, some of the different worlds we can make for ourselves by our actions and the law of karma, are illustrated in this next great big circle for you. These are what are called the 6 realms, the 6 worlds we can live in, the 6 worlds we can create for ourselves. And over the last couple of weeks we've heard a lot about those realms. We've heard how they're really states of being, if you like. They're psychological and emotional states that we probably all experience. Probably we all experience all of them at one time or another. Sometimes in the same day. Satyajoti told this wonderful story about how somebody would experience every sort of state according to what happened to them in the day. But we all probably also have some of these realms that we spend a lot of time in. We're probably citizens of some of them, much more than we are of others. So over the last few weeks we've talked about the animal realm, in which we're just focused on basic biological needs and wants like food, sex, comfort, and physical well-being. We've heard about the hell realm, in which extreme negative mental states create a world that is a sort of hell. We've heard about the realm of the hungry ghosts with their enormous bellies and their tiny mouths, huge appetites, tiny mouths, symbolising craving that can never be satisfied. So the world of the addict and the consumer who always wants more and more, better and better cars and gadgets and whatever. We've heard about the realm of the arsuras, or the jealous gods, as they're sometimes called. A world of big, competitive, envious egos battling each other. The world of the ambitious. The world that a lot of people in business and politics live in. And we heard about the world of the gods, a world of constant beauty and refined pleasure. Sounds like a great place to be. It would be a great place to spend some time, but it's a place it's a realm that's bound to end. And we heard how that in that realm there's no suffering to spur us on. If we spend too long there, we become complacent. We forget about the reality of impermanence, and so when our God realm ends, we come down with a great crash, and that often there's showing a bit like a game of snakes and ladders. There's a ladder leading straight from the heaven realms of God realm right down to the hell realm, because we can crash really spectacularly. And finally, we heard about the human realm. The human realm in which we're not incapacitated by intense suffering, and we're not intoxicated by constant pleasure, where we have a culture, so we have higher ideas, we have cooperation, and there's just the right mix of suffering and happiness and connectedness to others and high aspirations to allow us to make spiritual progress and eventually to escape from the wheel altogether. So that's a bit of a lengthy recap about the wheel of life, which we've got here. And one of the central metaphors of the wheel of life and the whole teaching, and the whole of Buddhism, in fact, is that the ultimate goal of the spiritual life is to escape from the wheel. The wheel is also called samsara, and the spiritual life, according to Buddhism, is about escaping from samsara into nirvana, into the bliss of nirvana. The great escape. The great escape. But this idea of escape doesn't always go down very well with us in the West. Our cultural conditioning is very much that life is all about doing lots of things in the outer world, making things, making money, etc., etc. And that is often seen as reality. That's reality. So often the Buddhist idea of escape is interpreted to mean that Buddhists are trying to escape from reality. Well, depends what you mean by reality. Depends what you mean by reality. If by reality we mean the hungry ghost world of always wanting more and more, the world of the consumer society, then, well, maybe yes, it's a good thing to escape from it. If by reality we mean the world of the jealous gods, the asuras, the world of competitive ambition, the wrong sort of ambition, constant conflict and envy, well, yes, it's a good thing to escape from it. And in our society, some combination of those two realms is often precisely what people mean by reality. Reality means competitively getting on in the world, getting ahead of others, the realm of the asuras. And if we manage to do that, it means some serious shopping as a reward, the realm of the hungry ghosts. And yeah, we could go on, couldn't we? So if reality means the hell realm, well, who wouldn't want to get out of it? Who wouldn't want to escape? If reality means the animal realm, then surely escape from a lower level of awareness to a higher is a thoroughly positive thing. So, on one level, what the Wheel of Life shows us is that, well, our job, the job of us in the spiritual life, is to escape those lower realms, escape those realms that are not actually that great places to be, to live more and more in the human realm, and maybe take some nice excursions into the God realm, the realm of elevated pleasures. So it's to have more perspective, it's to get out of those other realms, get away from suffering, craving, focus on just animal needs, big ego, to have more perspective, to have more vision, to be more connected to others, to take responsibility for ourselves and our mental states and our actions. So if escape means escape to the human realm, well, sounds like a great thing to me. But the goal of the teaching of the wheel and the goal of Buddhism is also escape on a deeper level. It's not just about escape from those lower states to the human state. It's about escape from the wheel altogether. So yeah, being truly human is our first goal, and it's a great goal, and it's not a trivial goal to be a true human being, but it's only the start. Then, once we've achieved that, our goal is escape even from the human realm, and even from the God realm. So isn't that an escape from reality? Isn't that escapism? Well, once again, it depends on what you mean by reality, and it depends on what you mean by escape. So if we're all in a concentration camp, and some of us are planning an escape, and others are saying, well, no, you know, others have forgotten there's a reality outside. And they're saying, oh, you know, settle down, this is the reality. Look, there's cards, and there's TV, and we get an hour a day in the exercise yard. Accept reality. Then surely it's the ones who plan the escape who are really facing reality. The reality that we're in a concentration camp. To escape from a concentration camp we see as a thoroughly good thing. To accept it as reality, well, we see that as maybe a little bit cowardly. And surely the people who say, well, no, why would you wish to escape? We have cards. We get to watch TV for 2 hours and a quarter every evening and an hour in the exercise yard. Just make the best of that. Surely that is escapism, trying to distract ourselves. Well, in fact, we're in jail. So, Buddhism is about escape, but it isn't about escapism. And I'm lost in my... it's about escape, but it isn't about escapism. It isn't about escapism because, well, it depends what you mean by reality again, because actually the wheel of life, what some of us define as reality, is seen by Buddhists as, well, not reality at all, but a sort of delusion and a sort of jail that we need to escape from. And it's a mind-created jail. It's a jail that we create for ourselves. The realms are not real. We create them. We create the wheel between us and we keep it in existence. And it's a prison that we create ourselves and that we keep ourselves in. This is quite a common theme, actually, even in Western culture. So you have the poet Blake talking about the mind-forged manacles. We are imprisoned in manacles that we have made with our minds. They're only made by our minds. You have the great Bruce Springsteen saying, one frightened man and some shadows for bars. He's making the point that he imagines the shadows, therefore they imprison him. It's a really common theme that we create a prison for ourselves with our own minds. If we could see differently, if we could be differently, the bars would dissolve, the mind-forged manacles would drop away. They're not real. And the wheel of life is like that. The sort of escape we're talking about is escape from what binds us, escape from the mind-forged manacles, escape from the mind-made bars, escape from the prisons that we make for ourselves into freedom. So, as I said, it's a mind-made reality. I'd like to just explore that idea of a mind-made reality a little bit. What might that mean? So one modern analogy for that sort of mind-made reality is the virtual reality or the simulated reality. There's a cracking example of that in the film The Matrix. So I don't know if you remember The Matrix, a few years ago now. It was a very popular film, won a lot of awards. But in the science fiction film The Matrix, people live in a virtual world. They live in a simulated world, a virtual computer-generated world, which has been created to keep them docile, basically. And in this virtual world, they can do all sorts of apparently interesting things and have all sorts of apparently interesting adventures and pleasures, but none of it is real. None of it is going anywhere. It's all just created in the computer's mind. But there are some people, like the mysterious Morpheus, who have managed to escape from this false reality. And not only that, because they have escaped from that false reality, when they go back into that simulated world, they are free from it. They're not bound by it. They're free in a way that nobody else is, so that they can do things that nobody else can do. And in the film, I suppose the hero, the character Neo, starts to see hints. He's in this virtual world, but he starts to get hints through his activity as a computer hacker. He starts to get hints that all is not what it seems. It's a bit more mysterious than everybody thinks it is. He starts to get these glimpses that there's another reality behind this one. More deeper and more mysterious. So he starts investigating. He's a bit like somebody who's come across the Dharma and they start taking a real interest in the Dharma and the nature of reality, searching for the truth. And this search for the truth brings Neo into contact with Morpheus, the man who has escaped and is free. And Morpheus offers him a choice. He offers him a choice between a red pill and a green pill. And if he takes the red pill, he will see the real nature of the reality around him, and he will never be the same again. Things will never be the same again. But if he takes the green pill, he can lapse back into comfortable ignorance and carry on the way he was. And Neo chooses the red pill, and he sees the nature of the reality around him, and he sees what's really going on, so he gets unplugged from the computer reality. He gets unplugged from the matrix, and he joins a sort of resistance movement. A group of free humans who have been unplugged themselves from the matrix and whose aim is to unplug others from the matrix, to recruit them to their rebellion. So Neo is trained in how to get back into the matrix and be free of it and manipulate it, and he goes back into the matrix on a mission to free others. But unfortunately, this freedom mission is betrayed. It's betrayed to the authorities by a character who rejoices in the revealing name of Cypher, which means nobody, really, somebody who's nothing. Reality is too much for Cypher. He can't hack the real world outside the dream world of the Matrix, so he does a deal with the authorities to be plugged back in, forgiven and plugged back in, so he can go back to a comfortable life of delusion. So using that film as a sort of analogy, a modern analogy with the wheel, obviously the wheel in its different realms is like the Matrix. It's a non-reality that everybody thinks is the reality. And then Morpheus, who offers Neo the red pill to let him escape from the false reality, is like the Buddhas in the different realms. I mean, we've seen over the last couple of weeks that in each of the realms there's a Buddha, or actually an aspect of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, an aspect of, if you like, the compassionate activity of the enlightened mind. In each realm. So in each realm, there's an Avalokiteshvara offering what is needed by beings in that realm to escape. And Morpheus is just like Avalokiteshvara. He's going back into the wheel, into the Matrix, to free others. He appears in the Matrix, he appears in the false reality, but he isn't bound by it. He's free of it, and he's free to help others because of that. So if Morpheus is an aspect of the activity of Avalokiteshvara, then the other unplugged freedom fighters, well, they're also aspects of that. When they go back into the Matrix, the freedom fighters are like the Sangha at its best. The Sangha as an aspect of the activity of the enlightened mind, the activity of Avalokiteshvara, going into this deluded reality and offering people the means to freedom. So we could be freedom fighters. A few years ago we had the idea, we never actually did it, I think it was a really good idea, we had the idea of producing some Sheffield Buddhist Centre t-shirts. And what they were going to say was something like, on the back it was going to say Sheffield Buddhist Centre, and on the front it was going to say Samsara Liberation Front. And I think that was a thoroughly good idea that we should have pursued. So if anyone wants to produce some Samsara Liberation Front t-shirts, we're all for it. So if Neo and Morpheus and the other members are like the Sangha when it's carrying out the activity of Avalokiteshvara, then Cypher, the man who sells them down the river, because reality is too much for him and he'd much rather live in a comfortable but pointless non-reality, well, he is the real escapist. So Morpheus, Neo are the escapers. Cypher is the escapist. The people who stay in the prison camp are the escapists. The others are the escapers. But one way the story of the Matrix doesn't match up with the Wheel of Life is that, if you remember the film, in the Matrix, the reality people escape into is horrible. It's bleak, and it's a polluted, dead world that's run by machines. But the people who've seen beyond the false reality of the wheel and talked about it tell us over and over again that the reality of what's beyond the wheel, nirvana, is just wonderful. It is, well, it's so beautiful and so wonderful and so full of positive things that you can't say anything about it. It's just completely different from anything that we've experienced. You can't really imagine it. It's simply so much higher than the false reality that we're used to, that the only way we'll really get any idea of what it's like is to get a glimpse of it ourselves through our own spiritual practice. So in that way, the Matrix analogy doesn't really work, because what we're escaping to is a better reality, not a harsher one. So maybe in that sense a traditional analogy is better. The most common traditional analogy for the unrealness, the mentally created nature of the world we often live in is the dream, and maybe that's a bit better. In a dream we chase after things that seem very desirable, but can't offer any real satisfaction. And we run furiously away from things that don't really threaten us. Because they're the product of our own mind. We experience all sorts of really strong, powerful emotions, but none of it relates to anything that's really there. It's all mind-created, like the realms of the Wheel of Life. So all the dramas and so on that go on in dreams add up to nothing. They're just like patterns in the clouds. And in many ways, many of the dramas that we take part in are just the same. When they're gone, they're gone. They were just like patterns in the clouds. And of course, the Buddha, or an enlightened human being, is someone who has woken up from that dream. That's what Buddha means. Buddha means one who is awake. So the Buddha is like someone who's awake among dreamers. Or like somebody in the Matrix who knows what it's about when everybody else thinks it's real. But he's like someone who's awake among dreamers. And on that analogy, using that analogy of dreams, maybe that can give us a bit of an idea of what it might be like to be enlightened. Because we all know what it's like to wake up from a dream, say, where we're giving a public lecture and suddenly remember we forgot to put our trousers on. Or where we're doing an exam and we can't really even remember what subject we're talking about. Or where we're being chased around by a monster. We've probably all got the experience of waking up from that dream and thinking, phew, I'm liberated, I'm free. We feel freed and liberated from a delusional reality that was seemed overpoweringly horrible. Okay, not all dreams like that. Maybe sometimes in our dreams even Avalokiteshvara comes and gives us a teaching. I don't know. But we all know what I mean. You all know what it's like to wake up from a dream and feel that relief, that liberation. We've woken up from a more deluded reality into a more real reality. And suddenly everything is different. And it might be a bit like that when we wake up from this reality. By analogy, it's as though this is a bit of a dream too. There are different levels of reality. Okay, a dream reality is lower than this one, but the reality of the enlightened person is higher than this one. To an enlightened being, we seem as though we're all dreaming. And And if you've ever had the experience of lucid dreaming, you might know a little bit about what it might feel like to, as it were, be in a delusional reality and know that it is delusional and what that feels like. Lucid dreaming is what happens when sometimes in a dream it occurs to you, I'm dreaming. Wow. I can do anything. I'm dreaming. If you haven't had the experience of lucid dreaming, and you want to have the experience of lucid dreaming, what I recommend is doing a lot of meditation. Because the only times I've had that experience are when I've been doing a lot of meditation. But when it happens, it's really something, actually. It's really something. You suddenly realise, I'm not bound by this reality I'm in. In fact, I can manipulate it in all sorts of ways. I had a strong spell of lucid dreaming where it suddenly came to an end because I thought, hey, I'm lucid dreaming. I'd sort of tried flying, that was fun. I'd done all sorts of things. I thought they were fun, and I thought, hey, I could have really good sex. And then I didn't have another one for about 5 years. And then I thought I'd learned my lesson. I had another experience of lucid dreaming, and I thought, I've learned my lesson. I will ask to see the Buddha. So I said, okay, no, don't do the sex. I'd like to see the Buddha, please. So I was taken into this hall, this great big hall, and there was this window. And what I could see was a little part of a huge orange-covered knee. And that was the response. Maybe you get what you're ready for. But anyway, that experience of lucid dreaming can be really something because it comes along with an absolutely exhilarating sense of freedom and power and liberation. And maybe that's a bit what it's like to wake up from this delusional reality into a higher level of reality. So there's an analogy, the dream. Another modern analogy is a bit more superficial. I think is the idea of a computer game. So say this computer game takes place in a vast rambling castle. There's a vast rambling Gothic castle full of chamber after chamber after chamber. There's banqueting halls, there's huge vaulted fencing halls where you can do battles. There's cellars, dungeons, boudoirs. There's all sorts in this place. There's all sorts in this place with tunnels between them. And you can go into all these different chambers, all these different rooms, all these different scenarios and do all sorts of interesting things. Take part in all sorts of plots and battles and score all sorts of points. Because that's what games are about. But when you leave that room, what you find is when you leave that room, when you leave that scenario, you might as well not have got your points. They're all just wiped out. They didn't amount to anything. You end up somewhere else, and they're all gone. So, for a long time, this could be quite an interesting game. You go from one room to another, doing what you do in that sort of particular place, getting points, and then going somewhere else, losing them all. But after a while, that might start to seem a bit pointless. Doing all these interesting things just doesn't add up to anything. You keep scoring all these points and then moving on and losing them, going back to zero. And then when the novelty started to wear off, because it all seems a bit pointless, you might notice that the room you're in actually looks a bit like one you were in some time ago. And you might cast your mind back and think there's a certain repetitiveness about these rooms. They keep coming back to the same place. The castle isn't so vast and rambling after all. In fact, it starts to feel a bit small and cramped and a bit like a prison. And then you take the drastic step of reading the manual. And the manual tells you that the whole point of this computer game has got nothing to do with any of the things you've been doing. The castle is actually a prison, and the whole point of the game is to find the means of escape, to find the secret door, or the hidden passageway, or the helpful guide who will help you get out of the castle. And all these other things are just pure distraction that you've been doing all this time. So you've just been wasting your time. So the point of the game is, the point of the Wheel of Life is escape. the castle that looked so big and so fascinating. It's in fact a prison, and we need to find the secret door. So this is about escape, but it definitely isn't, as I said, about escapism. It's people who stay in the matrix, stay in the prison camp, who are the escapists. But it is about escape. And again, people may object, well, surely that is very selfish. This idea that we're going to escape from this reality into the bliss of nirvana, escape from samsara into the bliss of nirvana, surely that's a very selfish thing to aim for. Well, yes, it would be, if that's what we were aiming for. But thank heavens we're not. Escaping doesn't mean sort of, if we escape from the meaning of life, it doesn't mean we sort of vanish into some other place. What we escape from are the mind-made manacles and the imaginary bars that we've created. We escape into freedom, which gives us the ability to be much, much more effective in the place that we are. It gives us, we cease to be part of the problem of the wheel, and we can start to be part of the solution. We can start to be not one of the characters in the realms, ruled by that realm. We can start to be part of the activity of Avalokiteshvara. So, over and over again, the Buddha tells his followers to practice for the welfare of the many, for the well-being of gods and men. He's making the point that the Dharma, the path, is not just an individualistic quest for selfish liberation. It's about helping all beings become more enlightened, more liberated. There might have been times in Buddhist history when some schools have taken a bit of a wrong turning and just focused on individual liberation as the goal. But when that's happened, others have quickly come along and redressed the balance, stressed that the goal is not just about me and my enlightenment, it's about us. It's about us and our enlightenment. It's about us getting enlightenment. If we focus just on ourselves, we've sort of missed the point. Because part of the delusion that keeps us trapped in that wheel is this delusion of separate selfhood, who can just look after themselves. If we see beyond that delusion, we can no more think in terms of an individualistic enlightenment. We see enlightenment as something that is a way of expressing our strong solidarity with others. So Morpheus and Neo and the freedom fighters in the Matrix, they go back and they help others to escape. Well, as I say, I don't think it's really like the Matrix, because in the Matrix there's another physical reality. I think we just stay in this reality. That's my personal view. We don't experience a different world when we escape from the wheel. What we do is we see the world that we're in completely differently. We see it differently, we feel about it differently, we act in it differently. We are free from all the drives and the compulsions that those realms actually represent. We're free from greed, hatred and delusion, so that we can act creatively in our own interests and in the interests of others. We can be the means of a much bigger liberation. We're like people who are awake in the dream and can help liberate others. Like Morpheus and the rest, we can hardly abandon the rest of humanity to its fate and say, I'm just going to get out of here. Because unless lots and lots of us escape, there's not much point in escaping, actually. It's not going to, it's not going to work if we just try and have one of us escape. And B, it's not going to be much fun when we escape, because there won't be any community of free people to escape into. So when we escape, we're in the world, but we are not of it. We're in the same physical reality as before, but we're not being pushed around by it. We're free to help. We escape into a greater degree of engagement. We become part of the Avalokiteshvara in the realms rather than part of the victims of the realms. So if we sort of use the analogy of the prison camp, as I said, it isn't going to be any use to us to escape on our own, because we'll get caught. All those bulldogs and things, they're just going to catch us. So it isn't going to be any use to escape on our own. And escaping on our own just isn't going to work, because if everybody else is in jail, it's going to be no fun at all. So what we need to do, and the goal of Buddhism, is not to escape ourselves, it's to organise a mass breakout. The Samsara Liberation Movement again. Join the Samsara Liberation Front and organise a mass breakout from samsara. That's what we're trying to do. That's the whole point of it all. Okay, how in practical terms might we go about doing that? Well, we've seen that the wheel is driven by the three animals: greed, hatred and delusion. So anything we do that undermines greed, hatred and delusion slows the wheel and makes it easier to get off. So greed. What about greed? Well, one thing we can do is to free ourselves from always wanting more. Just remind ourselves when we get that urge to have more that this isn't going to work. It's a treadmill. Learn maybe to live a bit more simply, appreciating what we've got, appreciating the simple, real things like friendship and the beauty of the world, rather than wanting lots and lots of complicated stuff that requires us to live complicated lives to pay for it. Wean ourselves off the consumer society. The consumer society is the wheel of life running on overdrive. Okay, somebody's sort of put a rocket motor in it and spun it around, and it's going around really fast. Give me more. That's the solution. So that's one thing we can do, is wean ourselves off the consumer society, live a bit more simply. So greed. Hatred. Well, one thing we can do is do the metta bhavana. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? So move beyond hatred towards compassion and love and connection with others. Vajratara, who used to teach here, she used to have this thing that she used to say, doing the metta bhavana is like putting your hand right in the centre of the wheel of life and grabbing it so that it stops. Actually, that sounds very dangerous to me, but it's a strong way of putting it. Do the metta bhavana. And then finally, delusion. Well, how do we overcome delusion? We expose ourselves to the Dharma. We listen to the Dharma. We read the Dharma. We study the Dharma. We reflect on the Dharma. And we try to get a bit of perspective. Maybe get a bit of perspective about all those fascinating points that we can score in the different worlds, the different chambers of the Wheel of Life game. Maybe start to see that they're not much use for anything, and that the real need is escape. Ask ourselves, does all this really add up to anything? So there's various things we can do to just get that much bigger perspective on things, to free ourselves from all these things that we chase and run away from that don't really matter. And finally, well, an aspect of wisdom is to cultivate freedom. Obviously, we've been talking about escape and escape into freedom. We need to look for the secret door that leads out of the castle that is really a prison. We've got this big Gothic castle, this prison with many rooms and dungeons, and there is a secret door we can find. And the key to finding this door is given in hieroglyphic code in the outer rim of that Wheel of Life. So on the outer rim of that Wheel of Life, there are 12 hieroglyphics. There's a blind man, there's some people in a boat, there's a house, there's a woman giving a man a drink. What does it all mean? Well, it's a secret code. It's a secret code that tells us how to find the door. And the code says, how does the wheel work and where's the door? And next week, that's what Bodhinaga is going to be talking about. Where we can find the secret door and what hieroglyphics tell us.